Welcome to a 2024 wrap up.
A look into this past year, really reflecting what has been going on in EdRed with myself, Arabed Hernandez, and our executive director, Bridget Peach. How
Awesome.
are you, Bridget?
Doing well, enjoying the quiet before we head back down to Springfield on January 2nd. Second day of 2025, we'll be back in Springfield, Illinois for the lame duck session. But I'm excited to talk to you about just what 2024 held for us and kind of take a step back to reflect and take stock before we look ahead to the new year.
Yes, we're gonna hit off. You're right, this 2025 year running. Hopefully time will fly by, maybe. I don't know if that's a good
See,
thing, but
it's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. My Christmas decorations probably won't be taken down until further into January than is typical, but that's okay. But no, 2024 was a great year. I think in general, it was filled with a lot of hope and expectations with relatively limited action, at least legislatively, taken down in Springfield. There were some wins, but in general, I would say that my favorite parts had to do organizationally with what EdRed put on. This last January, we didn't have a lame duck session, it was just a continuation. So instead of a lot of legislative action and time in Springfield kicking off 2024, we saw most legislators for the first time at the end of January for our legislative dinner. So
Mhm.
in addition to the attendees, we had a legislator panel where we heard from four legislators of varying, experience levels in the General Assembly speak on a variety of issues. We had about 200 people attend, between school board members, superintendents, district officials. We also had, of course, our amazing annual sponsors and partners there who joined us for a night of obviously networking and connection, but also for that legislative panel.
I think it was really neat, especially for this year. It was the first year that we moved this event to a school district. So I think starting the year, starting that legislative calendar, centered around an in-house of really the reason why we do the work that we do and the advocacy we do, which is for the students, for the schools, was a really cool kind of just reminder and setback of like, all right, we're grounding ourselves on the work that we do, and this is why we do it. So I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. I would say my favorite, no offense to the legislators, but my favorite part of the event was having student tour guides, I know a lot of members got to go on tours, but also having
Hmm.
student performers,
Yes.
performing, some instrumentals during, the networking hour. I thought that was really great.
I agree. The
Anytime.
amount of students that's signed up for those student tours. Oh my God.
Yeah, we had a good group and it was hard to squeeze those in, but I know the few people that I was able to connect with that took the tours. I mean, it's Stevenson High School. It is a school that so many schools aspire to someday be at the same level of. And part of our job and our goal is to get those opportunities for all schools to someday become a Stevenson if they can. So definitely my favorite part was the student element and being in school.
Mhm.
That was such a great atmosphere to have that event at.
100%. Thinking back to the spring, advocacy days. That was
Yes.
a new improvement growth part of our organization.
We've had about 15 people within EdRed come down to Springfield. They got to shadow me for a day down at the Capitol. They definitely got the classic Springfield experience of hurry up and wait. There was a lot of this is scheduled, committee is scheduled for this time, and it might not actually start for another 3 hours. So it was really great to obviously share my experience and what I do for 6 months out of the year, but also the less glamorous parts. There is a lot of sitting around and waiting and being on call. And sometimes I go down there and there isn't much going on, but my job is to be there ready to represent my members. So that was really a great first event and first advocacy day. We are going to be doing this again in 2025. We're working on confirming those dates. I'm trying to have some kind of psychic ability to figure out when we can have members come down for this, where they will see more action, maybe a little less waiting around. It's not within my control completely, but we're trying to be strategic there. We're going to have guided tours. I'm going to go ahead and book those. So it's a bit more exciting than where I get my coffee in the morning and where I hang out when there's time to kill.
We want to see all the inner workings of it, Bridget. We want
Yeah,
to see
I
all
mean, it's how the sausage is made. We'll continue to do those legislator meetings. I know pretty much every
Yes.
single member that came down got FaceTime with their legislators.
Hmm.
So obviously that's beneficial. If nothing else happens, that's something that's really great for our members to experience, especially when a lot of times when they're talking with their legislators, it's in their districts. And that's great, but the legislators spend half their year down in Springfield. So it's great to be
Yeah.
kind of on their turf, to have those meetings and those conversations. So definitely keep an eye out for those dates. We're hoping we'll be able to schedule it for a time where we can get more people to engage and be able to attend based on just the logistics. We will be capping the number of attendees. We want to make sure that it's beneficial. It's something that between the two of us, we can manage, kind of a school field trip kind of vibe. We can only chaperone so many people and make sure that everybody's having a beneficial time, use of their travel, all of that good stuff.
Just noting last year was our first one, and we took the feedback that the members who attended gave us. I know we each had conversations with them individually and then also as a group, and I'm excited to improving that and really creating it into something that can help foster these relationships with legislators in Springfield and also just giving that inner look of what advocacy looks like.
Pulling back the
Done in
curtain.
Springfield. Yes, exactly. Let's get to the biggest part of the spring
The
with
meat.
the legislation.
Yeah, we had 720 plus bills related to public education that Ed was tracking. Of those, we had 45 bills passed both chambers, signed by the governor into law by the end of session. So that's a big deficit of how many were filed, we were tracking versus how many actually got across the finish line.
Yeah.
But we identified the 700 plus bills that had any kind of impact on public education, on schools in Illinois, whether it's school finance, whether it's special education, whether it's curriculum, anything that would impact the functioning of a public school district, we tracked.
Yeah.
Now, over 700 bills, a lot of those weren't positioned to move. But if we know anything about the General Assembly down in Springfield, things can change really quickly. So we always track more than we think are going to move so that we have those alerts, we have our systems in place so that we are alerted anytime anything happens legislatively surrounding public education. And we'll talk later on. I know we're going to touch on looking forward in 2025. We'll talk about what a brand new General Assembly will look like and the dynamics with bills. But in 2024, it really was the holdover from the spring of 2023 and just a few additional bills that were newly filed.
And part of that legislation was some of our AdRad initiatives. Specifically, I was going to speak to supporting the newcomer students and the work we've done with that. It's been 3 years in the making of us trying to get the General Assembly to provide some sort of support to our school districts when it comes to newcomer students. And we continued our efforts and even partnered for the second year with the Latino Policy Forum with their Latino Unity Days down in Springfield. And we sat on a panel, and we know that some of the attendees from the Latino Unity Days went out and actually spoke with our sponsor for the bill, which is Representative Fred Crespo, which is great. But fortunately, given that it was a tight budget year, it did not move how we wanted it to move. I know you took a lot of heat during the hearing for this piece of legislation, so kudos to you. Given the political climate that we have, it is a political issue, but at the end of the day, at our core, our goal is to serve students, and I believe our chair, Joel Finfer, shout out to Joel,
Mhm.
put it the best way. Our job is to serve students, and every student has a right to a public education. So that's where we stand on that.
100%. It was part of me is really sad that we're not in a position to continue advocating for that initiative for a variety of reasons. But I was really proud of the work that we did in partnership with the Latino Policy Forum, with CPS. This past year, we partnered with CPS on the initiative, as well as our suburban counterparts, Lend and Scope for South Cook and DuPage County, respectively. So I really am I'm very grateful for the work that we were able to do with our partner organizations in the suburbs because we were able to bring forward concerns, issues, funding stresses that our districts are facing with an influx in enrollment. It transcends the politics, of course. Anytime you're testifying in front of a committee in the General Assembly, politics is that big elephant in the room. But I really was proud of the work that we were able to do, even though we weren't able to get additional funding. I feel like we sufficiently brought light to the incredible work our districts are doing. So this year, like I said, we are renewing our work on this initiative. We're going to continue those partnerships with Latino Policy Forum and our other colleagues for school districts to talk about ways we can pursue legislation to provide more flexibility for districts that are serving this population, maybe more administrative rulemaking advocacy that we can do to still bring support, but financially the state's forecast just doesn't seem like an avenue that is likely to pay off. So unfortunately, we won't be renewing that, but I'm really proud of the work we did in 2024 on that initiative on behalf of the school districts serving the population.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, the work doesn't stop. We might not continue this initiative, but we are looking for other ways to support the school districts who are serving this community. So our work is definitely far from over.
It's never done.
Summer, let's talk about one of the really cool new programs that we brought to our members. Let's talk about the EdRed and Lake ROE Mini Summit.
I believe 2 years ago now, with our legislative dinner, we created pre-dinner mini sessions. And I know on and off for years, EdRed has kind of dabbled in like a professional development offering, some educational opportunities. But this year, we decided to go ahead and dedicate an entire morning in June to professional development and learning opportunities for all of our members, whether you're getting professional development credit or you're just there to, learn and become a better school board member. We were able to obviously offer that professional development credit. We had so many sessions on every topic under the sun, although I'm sure there were more that we'll be touching on in next year's summit. But we also were joined by our keynote, John Bacon, who wrapped up the morning of learning some really inspirational remarks that I think regardless of what your professional role is, you could get something great out of his remarks. It was a really great
Yeah.
morning. Once again, it was the first year we did that. Along with Advocacy Day, these were new events. We're obviously excited to continue. We'll be taking in all of that feedback we collect after the events. We will be doing it again next year, so 2025. We've got a date already. So if you're listening to this, you're getting early save the date info of June 12th, 2025 at Glenbrook North High School. We're excited to be doing this again this year, but we're excited to be doing this again. And we're already making a list of breakout sessions. Like we've already got a list going and it's only December and we've already got that list going. So super excited about that.
Just the feedback from our members who attended that the sessions were incredible. So let's talk about the EdRed rebrand. We're talking about
Mhm.
advocacy days, we're talking about mini summit, we're talking about this podcast. All were additions to EdRed this last year in our programming. Something else that we also did internally with our executive board was do strategic planning and rebranding. Let's talk about that process.
Yeah, if we weren't busy enough, we decided that it was long overdue to not only rebrand and give our logo and all of that a facelift, but also to look at our mission, our guiding principles, our themes, because they were over 10 years old. So
Yeah.
it was definitely time to reflect. We had this summer of 2023, we had a 50% turnover in our executive board. We
Yes,
had a
that was
bunch
good
of
to know.
members come off the board. We have term limits on our executive board, so a lot of folks came off. So we really grabbed that opportunity to be able to have a fresh new executive board with so many different perspectives and backgrounds to really come together at our retreat over the summer and the fall to discuss where is Ed Red headed? What have we done? What do we need to work on? What does Ed Red look like in 2024 and onwards? So we had a great retreat. It was amazing to hear all of the different perspectives coming together to really say the same thing. I think there was a lot of consensus on from the
Yeah.
board on where the organization is going. So we were able to get our new mission statement. We were able to put together our guiding principles, set goals. My favorite part was the logo. I've said this at a lot of our events since we released the logo. It's my favorite thing we've done so far of the strategic plan since it's still new. But we were able to work with students in the graphic design program at Round Lake High School.
That is really cool. They did amazing work, and shout out to Round Lake and those students because it's really neat to be able to share that fact that our not only is this our logo, but this logo is literally representative and made by the students that we represent.
And students who learned about what we do as an organization and learned about our strategic plan and our process to come up with a logo that is so representative of what we do. So in addition to that, we, of course, with the new logo comes all the fun new merchandise and branding items. And we're continuing that tradition of getting students involved in our work and our identity through transition programs through Niles Township. So we got buttons. We picked up buttons just this week that were made by Niles North students with our new logo. And I will continue to say it anytime we can partner with students on anything, we're going to. That's why we do the work we do. So yeah, the rebranding was a big part of this year, not only the strategic planning process, but that redesigning of our image. And that work is far from done. We've got a lot of exciting things coming in 2025, but in 2024, we did the really hard work of coming up with that new strategic plan with a new logo.
And like you said, I love how we keep grounding ourselves back and we keep working collaboratively with the students and bringing ourselves back to what our purpose for advocacy is.
Our why.
Yeah. I love it. And I was going to say my favorite, I have multiple favorite parts about our strategic plan and our rebranding. I do love the fact that we work with the students, but this goes to shout out for Joel again, apparently.
Mhm. He gets
Is-
two shout outs. I like
yes, he does. We've reached our capacity.
it.
But one of our beliefs now really ties in the research part of EdRed, that we believe in research-based education policy, and we believe that it's imperative to the success of our schools. And I'm really looking forward to further developing and supporting this aspect of EdRed alongside with you.
I remember early on when I started in this role, one of our legislators asking one day, what does EdRed stand, like, what does that mean? What does it stand for? Is it an acronym? Is it just your favorite color is red? Like what is going on with, our name? And it stands for those who don't know, it's education, research, and development. And so going into the strategic planning process, our priority was to really highlight the core of who we are, why we were created back in 1972. And that was for education, research, and development. And we do all three, but we want to be intentional. So those three pillars that our name represents are very, very present in our strategic plan.
Our legislative breakfast was also something that happened at the end of the summer, start of the fall. I really love the legislative breakfast. It is one of our newer features. This is our second one that we've done.
Yeah.
I love the fact that our members take that as an opportunity to have in-depth conversations about certain topics with our legislators. I feel like it's a great opportunity and way to connect with your legislators and really educate, almost like an education piece of our advocacy.
It is for sure. I know that after this year's legislative breakfast, I had one of our legislators who who was in attendance, but also hasn't been super vocal and engaged in other areas of what Ed Red does. And they came up to me and we were like, this event is so beneficial because I can talk to so many of my school districts in one spot in a time frame that is so condensed. It was so great to hear, at least from the legislator perspective, because we're so focused, obviously, our members are number one. We want to make sure that we're giving great opportunities and events to our members. But hearing from the legislators that this is a format that really works with not only their schedule, but the efficiency being such a draw. So I think we had probably 10 legislators, if not staff, from legislative offices there. And it really helped lay the groundwork for our initiatives from those conversations that we had. So I would agree. I think the legislative breakfast has become one of my favorite events purely for it kind of takes down like the pomp and circumstance. Like it's truly a let's all just sit around a table and talk about one of the million topics in public education right now and have a really honest and frank conversation with our public policymakers. So this year was great because we had such great engagement. We were able to pull from that when coming up with our initiatives for the year ahead.
It was great. Fast forwarding us a little bit,
Yeah.
our kickoff luncheon. And I do want to highlight, so talking about these events and reflecting back, these events, especially with the legislators, like it is so important for our members to be present
Mm.
and to attend. And they're great opportunities. You get one-on-one conversations with your legislators. And you've said this a million times, and I know you've heard it from Bill Harrison, former board chair. You don't want the first time you make a call to your local representative to be when you need something. You want to build those relationships ahead of time. And I just want to highlight that all these events that we're putting on and that we've been growing internally build that foundation with your local representative, with their staff, if it's their staff attending. Shifting to the fall, the kickoff luncheon. This one was really cool because I don't think we've had a speaker on this before, but we partnered with the Latino Policy Forum and we had the keynote speak on English learners.
Yeah, Dr. Rebecca von der Leck Navarro came in and blew the room away with her expertise, her work in the space of serving English learners. It was such a great learning opportunity for our members and for the legislators in attendance to hear from an expert in the field, somebody who's actively doing such amazing research on the topic to figure out how school districts can best serve the population. So we definitely had some great feedback, first of all, on the keynote. Everybody was very much on the same page with just how much they learned. We want to keep things fresh. Each event, we want to bring something new and exciting and different to our members. And this definitely fit in that category. We had a sold out event. We had so many legislators join us. So many of our partners came, along with, of course, our members. So the keynote was incredible. We did launch our strategic plan and our new logo. So that was the first time our members as a whole heard from us on the work we had been doing. Overall, really a great event. And I was very impressed with how many legislators and slash staffers we had in attendance based on the timing of the event. We had it right before the general election. And to know we had legislators who were willing to sacrifice some of their time knocking on doors and doing all of that to be with us, that was really great to see. And once again, a sign that our legislators do believe in the work Everett's doing, but also value the relationships they have with their local school officials.
I think it was amazing to see the turnout from the legislative staff or the legislators themselves, given that it was this election year and it was a very important political election year. Let's talk about the election results. I don't think we've touched on that. Oh, I feel like you talked about it a little bit at our last member meeting, right?
Yeah, I think it's a whole bunch of nothing. I mean, there were a few races that we were keeping an eye on because there was a potential that they
Or
would
they were
flip.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are some legislative races that were decided by a handful of votes. So as much as there was a lot of question and, predictions made ahead of the election, the updates are pretty much is very unexciting. Nothing changed for ad red legislators. We have the same legislators that we did before the election that will be sworn in at the beginning of January. So not much really changed statewide in terms of our elected officials. Of course, federally, we know that that's a bit different, but in terms of AdRed's territory, nothing really changed, which is good news for us. It means that the relationships that we've been working to build will continue to be built over the next 4 years, depending on which seat you're talking about.
Yeah. So that leads us into veto session. I know there was a lot of expectations going in. There's a lot of questions on what would get done, what they would tackle. Pensions is a big one
Yeah.
that it's on everybody's mind. Let's talk. What did they actually get done?
Very little when it comes to education. Going in, there was a lot of discussion, and the discussion remains in terms of the 2025 session, how much the state of Illinois is going to do in response to a new administration coming into the White House.
Mhm.
So going in, there was expectations that a lot of things could be on the table, as we've been experiencing for the past 2+ years. Anytime we're in a non-session timeline, the discussion is, well, the next time we're in Springfield, we're going to talk pensions. As I've mentioned at our member meeting and other communications I've put out, we did see a pension proposal get filed. It did not get a hearing. A hearing was scheduled, but was eventually canceled. So very little took place over veto session in regards to public education at red school districts.
And that brings us to now.
My crystal ball, as I always say, 2024 definitely has been a year of development, growth. It's really interesting because if you look at the surface, just the surface level, outward looking of EdRed, we've had 2 new member events and opportunities. We've added the mini summit, we've added advocacy days. Those are opportunities that our members exclusively have.
Yeah.
If you go a bit deeper and you pull that curtain back, we've created a brand new strategic plan. We've done a rebranding. We have elevated your role at the organization,
Yes.
to a new level of visibility and engagement. Having 2 people visible to not only our members, but our legislators and partners. We really are elevating EdRed's persona, our role, and hopefully the result is elevating our impact when it comes to good policy making. Sometimes my crystal ball is a bit more cloudy than others. Looking into 2025, first of all, the big news is the federal government and the new administration going in. It all trickles down to the state level and to our local government. And so when thinking about what 2025 has in store, I think a lot of it, especially the legislature, will depend on what happens at the federal level. And that goes beyond just education and what we're looking at, but we have to kind of keep a big picture perspective because that's the nature of education. We know this. We know that teaching and educating is one item on a list of a million that school districts are held responsible for. So
Yes.
what we do know is that the General Assembly has a calendar they've put out that includes a lame duck session, which I think at our last member meeting, I asked the attendees, raise your hand if you know what a lame duck session is. And I think one person raised their hand. So for those listening who don't know, a lame duck session is a special session that happens the days leading up to the inauguration. So as I mentioned, we will be wrapping up the 103rd General Assembly. And as of January 8th is inauguration, and that will mark the beginning of the 104th General Assembly. So those few days that have been scheduled from the 2nd until the 7th of session, that's considered lame duck. The idea is this is the last absolute chance to move any legislation that was introduced in the 103rd before inauguration happens and the slate is wiped clean. So, what I always say to expect is literally anything, which is not helpful, but literally anything can happen during these few days. We could be sitting here on inauguration day and say nothing has happened. Or we could be sitting on inauguration day going, they just passed 4 new mandates for curriculum for local school districts. We don't know. So my sage advice for those few days at the beginning of 2025 is to just be aware that this is happening, that items may be calling for action alerts. So there may be more emails in your inbox, but we'll be keeping an eye on any last minute bills that get pushed. Once again, in response to the administration shift at the federal level, anything really is possible in terms of what the state wants to do in response to that expected change in administration. Since we're going into the 104th, like I said, the slate will be wiped clean. So every single member will be filing their bills on every topic under the sun. It's very typical that the majority of legislators file something on education, whether small, big, medium-sized. We expect at least 1,000 bills on education to be filed. I would probably push that up to 1,200, but at the very least, we'll have probably 1,000 bills get filed on the subject of public education. The schedule, which is the one concrete thing we have at this moment, as of December 10th that we have, is more frequent in session days as well as more consistent in session days. And what I mean by that is you've got 2 chambers in Illinois, and each chamber has their own calendar. In the past few years, they really haven't aligned, at least with the deadlines. This year, we see deadlines being shared. So, for example, third reading deadline, the first third reading deadline, so all bills have to pass out of the originating chamber, happen on the same day. So that's a good thing. Got one deadline day that should help in terms of our tracking and our organizational purposes.
Yeah.
What's different is we've got both chambers scheduling weeks where they're the only chamber in. So overall, big picture view, we've got 20 additional session days compared to last session. So last spring, 2024, we have 20 additional days on top of what they were in for during that timeline.
Mhm.
The other piece is that from January 2nd, which is the scheduled first day of lame duck, to May 31st, which is adjournment date, note that they're not expecting early adjournment as they have the past few years. They are holding on that May 31st adjournment date. Between those months, there are 4 weeks where neither chamber is scheduled to be in session. So it could mean that there's going to be a lot of legislative action taken, or it could mean that they're going to be down there, but not actively doing much legislative action on the floor. There may be a lot of days where they're just sitting on the floor and there are conversations happening behind the scenes that your average person is unaware of. So we will be down there for all the session days as we usually are. The big question mark is what it's actually going to look like. If they're going to cancel some session days, if they're going to be just packing every bill they can get moved into those session days, we really don't know. But something that will be on stage on January 27th is our legislative dinner. So we are really excited to be joined by Noelle from the AASA, so our National Superintendents Association. She's going to come talk to us about what does 2025 and beyond look like when it comes to public education. She's going to give us a great foundational knowledge on federal government and education. You know, Edred, we're really focused on the state level. So she'll be bringing her expertise to us on federal level of educational policy. We'll be 10 days out from the inauguration. So we'll be asking her to have her crystal ball on what she thinks we can expect at the federal level. But one of the main motivators for bringing her in to talk to our members on January 27th is really this overwhelming feeling I'm getting from members since the election of uncertainty, questions, fear, all of those emotions. EdRed needs to be a place where our members can come together, build networks, build connections to share best practices on how they're just operating day to day. And so I see Noel's keynote as the first step to really making Edred that place. We're going to continue doing the work that we have done and protecting and securing and representing and advocating for our public school districts. But we know that there's a big elephant in the room, and we're going to maneuver the best way we can. And hearing from Noel will give us such a great a sense of what's happening at the federal level, who the players are, what's going on, and what we need to know to make sure that we can do our jobs the best we can.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that conversation and hearing from her. For members, registration is open. The event is scheduled for January 27th. That is a Monday night. And as Bridget said, the title for this event is Securing the Future of Public Education, Navigating Federal Uncertainty in 2025. So I'm very excited for that. We are kicking off the 2025 year strong, I believe.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for listening in and joining us. Thank you, Bridget, for all that you do. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays to all. And we will be back come
2025.
2025. We will be
We
ready.
will be there in the new year, ready to go.